Hello, and welcome back to the weekly Star Trek Strange New World Season 2 reviews, where Episode 2 has just dropped. And it's the episode that we've been waiting for since the end of Season 1. Yes, we are finally at the trial of Commander Una Chin Riley, and whether or not she is going to stay in Starfleet for being an Illyrian, and which means she's an augment. And, you know, Starfleet don't like augments because of Khan and the eugenics wars. So, does she manage to escape? Well, let's find out in this review. So, the episode opens on Captain Pike going to get legal aid for his commander, specifically an Illyrian who used to be Una's friend, and he's barely managing in this environment that they've obviously the people of the planet have adapted to and are able to walk around more frequently. So he eventually convinces this old friend of Una to take on the case because initially she didn't want to, but she did because originally Una was offered a plea deal where if she pled guilty, she would be honorably discharged and could still live amongst, the Federation planets, and they would sweep it under the rug, as the Federation tends to do. Um, so then, when this friend comes and takes over as her legal counsel, they reject that offer, and then the love interest to Captain Pike, as well as a Vulcan uh, admiral or commodore, I can't remember which, um, comes back with saying that we are basically going for the whole shebang here, where we want to make an example out of Una, and when we win, we want her to have at least serve 20 years minimum in prison because of what she is. And so the legal proceedings go on. Pike wants to obviously take the stand, but unfortunately he can't, because if he did, he would indict himself for knowing that Una was an Illyrian and an augment, and then that would wreck him. That would put him and his captaincy in uh, in jeopardy. So yeah, the people that end up being called to the stand throughout the entire episode is Admiral uh, April and Spock, La'an, and Mbenga, um, to basically, talk about how they met and why and all this stuff. And yeah, it's like as a court procedural that we've seen every now and again in Star Trek. Like the one that for me springs to mind is Court Martial, and this episode, feels like Court Martial. It also feels like the court scenes in the Menagerie of the original series, and it's handled, really, really well. I absolutely loved how they went about things and how it builds up. La'an has a side plot where she's kind of trying to find out who leaked that La'an was Illyrian, and it turns out it was Una. She's the one who done it because she was tired of hiding who she was in the Federation, and she wanted to be out. She wanted people to know. She wanted to set an example, for other Illyrians who might want to enlist in Starfleet. Try and get the augment rule changed. And we learn a bit more about her backstory, and I love this because number one, in the cage, well, for starters, didn't have a name, and because that character wasn't brought over with Kirk's crew, we knew next to nothing about her. I mean, I'm sure it was covered in some beta canon books, and what have you. But the fact that we're actually getting to know more about this character that originally just appeared in one episode is absolutely amazing. I love the direction that they're taking with this, and Rebecca Romaine is doing absolutely amazing as Una Chin Riley. I absolutely love her character. I loved her in this episode. It was absolutely fantastic. Um, so when Una gets questioned about her past, she talks about how when a planet that she was staying on got brought into the Federation, uh, Federation laws started to apply. The key thing being no augments. And she talked about how her and her parents had to hide. They couldn't do any of their religious practices in public. It all had to be in private. And they lived in fear of being found out, because if they got found out, they'd go to prison. And she talks about how this 10-year-old who was cousins to one of her friends got found out at school, and then the hate mob started. It started with calling them augments and other derogatory terms. That 10-year-old and his family got arrested, um, and she then talks about how things escalated into violence, as these things tend to do. And it's mentioned that they use the augment law as an excuse to do so. And it's a very, you know, I love the backstory that they're giving her. And like I said, I absolutely love it. And then, you know, it turns out that the reason her legal counsel was doing this got her to open up and talk about why she wanted to join Starfleet, and her backstory, and why she wanted to, you know, come forward with who and what she is. The legal counsel then uses one of the Starfleet rules to her advantage, to make it seem like Una Chin Riley's is seeking asylum, because the Vulcan admiral who's on the opposing side basically asks her point blank, "Did Pike know?" And of course, he did. We know he did, and she gives the star date of when he found out. And so, thanks to, putting it as Una seeking asylum, she's actually granted asylum. And she can now serve as first officer on the Enterprise. Hopefully, she will be able to be promoted to captain, because I think she would make a fantastic captain. And I'd actually love to see a series of that, of Captain Una Chin Riley. So, yeah, this episode is absolutely amazing from beginning to end. It makes you invested, because obviously we've been invested since she got captured, she got arrested at the end of season 1, and we have been waiting since then, plus last week's episode, to find out what's going to happen. And it handled it excellent. From, as I said, from beginning to end, I was engrossed. I was waiting to see what happened. I was not expecting the twists and turns that came from this episode. And so far in season 2, this is the best episode. Now, granted, when the Lower Decks crossover episode happens in the next couple of weeks, whenever that's scheduled to happen, that more than likely will become the best episode of season 2. But as it stands, episode 2 is the best of the series, and probably even the best of season 1, in my opinion. This episode really is fantastic, and even though Pike is in it, he doesn't really get much to do. The same with the rest of the crew, which is grand, because it's not their story. The story is supposed to be centered around the trial of number 1, and it was handled stupendously. I absolutely loved it. So that has been my review for Star Trek Strange New World Season 2, Episode 2. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. And if you're excited to see more of my Star Trek reviews, make sure to subscribe. And later on tonight, I will be on a live stream with Video Tasties where I'll be watching, well, we'll be watching Star Trek First Contact, my favorite and the best Star Trek movie ever made. So if you ever wanted to tell me exactly what you think of this movie and my opinions on this movie, then 9 p.m. GMT plus 1 is where you will find it. But beware, these hands, they're rated E for everyone. I'll see you all later tonight.